Hey, everybody, welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indie video podcast vlog, or whatever you want to call it. Joining me in a totally impromptu, unprepared episode of this podcast is acting Derby Fire Department Chief Dave Lenart. Hey, Chief Lenart.
Good morning.
Did I get your title right?
You did, yes. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. As I was saying it, I was like, is this correct? So there has been a natural gas incident ongoing in Derby and Ansonia since about Tuesday morning. Dave,
Correct.
what's the latest you can tell us? It's essentially wrapping up at this point, right?
Yeah, the major operation has ceased. We actually ceased around 10 o'clock midnight last night. Um, we're at the point now, the Eversource, and I keep wanting to call them Yankee Gas, so I apologize if I intermingle the terms, but
Tell me about it.
yeah, Eversource has a little bit over 50 customers left in Derby that are still without service restored, and that is mainly because they haven't been able to get in to restore the service. So they've left door hangers with instructions. They're instructed to call 877-944-5325, and they'll have a technician come out and restore your service.
And then in terms of how this thing unfolded, the process to be restored, because that can be a confusing term from my end when they say restored, it's like a multi-step process. But so first they had to go around, and this started Tuesday night, an army of Eversource workers, crews, and then contractors hired by the utility company mobilized in the Lowe's parking lot off New Haven Avenue in Derby. They were sent out into the field and they basically switched off everyone's gas at the street. Tell me about that.
Okay, so the overall problem with the system was that it basically they were doing some work on a valve, and the valve shut. So they essentially, the easiest way to translate it is they shut off service to a large number of customers, which was about 2,339 was the latest exact number they gave us, and across Derby and Ansonia. And basically, so since they shut the service off, as people throughout or was it Tuesday morning at this point? As people
I
throughout
think.
Tuesday morning began going about their day and using their gas for their hot water, their furnaces, the area that was effectively shut off ran out of gas. So I think one of probably the biggest, I guess, mistakes we've made throughout the whole thing was we kept referring it to as a gas leak. And really there was no leak, is more of just the supply was shut off. So if you have gas appliances, your furnace, your hot water heater, anything like that, your oven, your stove, there was no gas in the system. So if you think about all the appliances that are out there that have a small pilot light lit somewhere on them to keep it burning and for you to keep it lit, all of those would have gone out. So the safest way to do everything was they had to physically go around and shut the gas service off, which usually could be done at the meter. So they went to the Tuesday night, they assembled, and they went around to all the addresses and shut the gas off at the meter. Then they were able to repressurize, if you will, their system, so the pipes in the street. And then the final phase was they had to go into your house or into people's houses or businesses, and they had to physically turn the gas back on and then make sure all the appliances came back up safely too, or relit pilot lights, things like that.
Now
Uh,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
and it's labor intensive, 2,300 locations. The Eversource, they did call an army. At one point, they had about 300 personnel on the ground, according to what they told us, which is a very large logistical operation for any organization to undertake. And they set it up in the parking lot of Lowe's. Like, there was a lot of buzz, but that was the staging area with the command post was there also.
Yeah, and then in terms of the initial problem, Mitch Gross, the spokesman for Eversource, explained it to me. Well, we had a malfunctioning valve that caused a backup. We dug it up and replaced the valve. You had said they were doing some road work. Like, where was the road work happening, or the maintenance, or whatever they were doing? They had dug up something
It was on Route 34.
on the Lowe's side of town, or the good
No,
side of
yeah,
town where I
it was
live.
on the east side of Derby. Yeah, the east side of Derby on 34.
Okay, so that's where the problem
And
was.
and a cautionary tale to this whole thing was, if you remember a few years ago in northern Massachusetts, there was a situation where in other words, they had the opposite problem. So for a lot of people who were worried about Oh, well, why do they have to come into our homes? Why do they have to make sure they have lights? A few years ago in Northern Mass, they had a situation where the lines received too much pressure. And what was basically happening was it was turning all those little pilot lights into mini flamethrowers. So you ask why Eversource, or people are asking why they had so many people here, why they had to get in everyone's homes, why they had to shut it off. You just need to look at that event in a comparison of a worst case scenario where they had the opposite problem. Instead of the system having no gas, they had way too much. And it started, off the top of my head, around like 40 to 60 buildings on fire.
Mm.
So when everything was done out of caution and safety, and it was done in a normal way, it's just, again, 2,300 locations of having to physically go and turn a wrench to shut it off and then go back and light it takes time.
Yeah, and I saw there was at least one person in one of the community groups who was asking, well, can I turn my pilot light back on? This was a day ago or so, but and I immediately reached out to Eversource, and they said, "By no, do
Right.
not do
No,
that. We have."
and again, they were very adamant. They wanted the responsibility of doing all that, which I think was good from them. On the fire department side of things, we actually received a phone call about 9:30 in the morning for a gas leak on New Haven Avenue.
Now,
And what
what?
happened was a lady had went to start cooking and noticed.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was going to ask you exactly where the gas leak was, but you're answering it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And she went to go start cooking and realized there was no gas coming out of her stove. So she, out of safety purposes, called the fire department because she thought it was very odd. And that's kind of what led us down the rabbit hole. By about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, we began deploying more resources. At that point, we put all of the fire companies in Derby on standby. We called firefighters to the firehouses, and we weren't on at that point too. We weren't 100% sure what the exact issue was, and our fear of there being some kind of large scale leak everywhere. And I hate to say there are very few cities in the state or in the country that understand the dangers of a gas leak like we do in Derby. And so we put all those crews on. And I guess one moment that I found, I had a call. So our ladder truck is out of service, and Ansonia is covering us. So I called Ansonia to have them have a crew on their ladder truck. And at the time, we didn't realize that the majority of the houses were actually in Ansonia. So we involved the Ansonia Fire Department right off the bat as our immediate backup, along with Shelton, Orange, Shelton, Orange, and the Seymour Fire Departments. Through our mutual aid, we notified all them. And then it was very, very rapidly after that I had to call Chief Eamon back from Ansonia and inform him that as much as this was my problem, it was just as much his problem too.
You must have loved
So
hearing that.
yeah. So at that point, we decided, behind the scene things, we as the management of the fire service, we train for these types of events, large scale, long duration events, but you don't see them as typical around here. And just for background, the training basically comes out of the lessons learned from out west, where they have the wildfires and when you're deploying 10,000 firefighters and emergency personnel over the period of 2 months, they've put together a lot of good training programs. So we established what's called a unified command post. We notified the regional hazardous materials team. We also notified the Fairfield County's hazardous materials team because they have some command resources, which if you were there with us, you saw the giant fire department command post that we had. That was from the Mid Fairfield County hazmat team. So during throughout the course of the incident in Derby, we had about 35 to 40 firefighters on standby. EMS personnel were also called in with the ambulance corps and their hazmat team. And then also we responded to about 26 incidents related to gas calls, smell of gases, um, those types of events throughout the day. Ironically, the last gas call we had was actually when they turned the gas back on the Derby Milford Road area. We had a gas leak at the East End Firehouse. So that was our last call of the night, was to go back to the East End Firehouse and fix the problem there.
And then when a gas leak call like that comes in, or odor of propane or natural gas or whatever, how's that call handled? You go in there with meters? How
Yes.
does that work?
So all
And
the fire.
was it any different? Was it any different over the last day or so, considering the fact that you had this incident going on?
No, not really. It's they're I hate to say, for us, odor gas calls are routine. They're part of our normal business. So each fire company in Derby carries a meter capable of sensing levels of explosive gases in the air. It also senses CO and a couple other different gases. So for us, it's a very routine call. And we go off the meter readings that tell us what to do from there. If we go in and we find no readings, which is what we're always hoping for, it's a lot easier than, specifically if we go in and start finding readings, because now you start playing a little bit of a detective game and trying to trace the source of where the leak is coming from.
And it,
Fortunately, in the majority of all these calls, with that, I hate to say, with the exception of the East End last night, we actually didn't really have gas in any of the. We did have one gas incident on South Division Street, which is a lot of people in Derby kind of forget about that street, which is the street under the Division Street Bridge by McDonald's. There, if you're on the Riverwalk, you can look across and see it. We did have one gas incident over there during the operation, which was yesterday morning. But again, since we had the unified command post with the Eversource personnel in the command post, as soon as we got the call for the gas leak, as we deployed our forces, they deployed theirs. So it made the situation, progress a lot quickly.
yeah, and then in terms of like that South Division Street one and the East End hose one, what was the nature of the problem? Like, what was actually going on there?
The hose actually, when the pilot light had gone out, and the Division Street one was a leak in the system that I don't know. It might have been there for a while, and they just nobody noticed it or paid attention to it or worried about it.
Hmm. Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, it was pretty. I went over Tuesday, and thank you very much for reaching out and for everything you did. It seems like over the last week, but it's only been a few days, to keep the public informed with those videos. Especially in the social media world, people want updates every 10 minutes, which can be very hard to do when everyone's still figuring out what was going on. And then much of Tuesday was, I was sitting in that parking lot, afraid to get out of my car because I was like, oh, they're going to throw me right out of here if they know I'm a reporter. So I was hiding for a good 45 minutes, getting ready to cover the election that night. But it turned out a lot of what was going on there, they were screening all their workers for COVID, from what I understand.
There was a lot of, again, it's logistics, and that's a lot of the larger incidents, the longer duration incidents. It becomes logistic driven. Where do you house, feed? Where do they go to the bathroom? Things like that begin to play into it. And the whole time that we were there, the whole time we were doing this, again, we had that unified command post. You had the fire department, the ambulance corps, the police department, the mayor's office, public works, all there for both cities, Derby and Ansonia. And as much as throughout this, and I'll even go back to the tropical storm in a couple months ago, my Facebook updates or my videos have given us in the fire department a good PR perspective. But none of that's done without first, running it through the other departments, running it through. I've seen some comments about how, like, well, where's the mayor? Where's the mayor? I'm not posting any of those without the mayor and I discussing them ahead of time. And our opinion has always been it's good when people have one familiar face. People feel much more comfortable. And that's kind of one of the reasons why it's fallen on me recently with some of these incidents. But I kind of laughed at a couple of comments where they said, oh, the mayor has been absent. The mayor was there with us in that command post for hours and hours at a time, on the phone, helping out. There are times where we were having, we were waiting for information from Eversource, and we were waiting and waiting and waiting. And then, you kind of got to kick it up a little bit, and you ask now the mayor to get involved. So it helps a lot. Another person that was a great help was Representative Clairtis. She was there.
I saw her show up. Yeah.
She was there for a while, and she was able to help us a couple times. Get some information, help us, make connections and who to talk to, type things. And the one of the difficulties we have is, in the fire service, we have very delineated command structures. It's paramilitary. I'm the fire chief. I give my instructions, my orders, and my guys carry them out, and we work like that. When you start dealing with third parties, private corporations, there's different layers. We were asking for a message from Eversource to go out on the code red system, or whatever the alert system is that they have nowadays. And we were waiting for it for a little while. And, like in their world, it has to go to corporate, and then it's got to go through legal, and they've got to make sure it's all correct. We're a lot of times in the fire service, we're much more, okay, this is what needs to be done, do it, versus dealing with like a corporate structure. So those were kind of just a little bit of the difficulties that we had in dealing, with a corporation rather than, us on our turf, if you will.
Yeah.
But most of them by the end of the first night were solved. by Tuesday night, like 10 o'clock, we had a good, who's who, couple meetings went by, just a couple of, meet and greets of over who we're supposed to talk to. And after that, it went very smoothly. I think Eversource did a great job of keeping us updated. They did a great job of coordinating with us if they needed us places and how to deploy us. So initial hiccups, but once we got the machine moving, it went very well.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point talking about the mayor. I mean, I'm just a small one-person news site, in Derby and Ansonia, but sometimes, like from my perspective, I'm just trying to get information out there. You get it in, you try to get it out, and you don't think about. Sometimes you don't think about where the information's coming from. You'll see what an official said. You just want to get the accurate info out there. And I will say, because I saw some of the posts being like, "Where's the mayor?" Maybe one or two. The we had been in contact. And then once Mayor Zekin called me on my phone, I don't think I put this in the story, but he called me. He said like, "Hey, here's what here's what we have going on." And I said, "Oh, I just talked to you, and I just talked to Eversource." But once he called, I said, "Oh, okay, this is really something," because you didn't know, there's the election was going on, and that's what got me over to report on it in person. And I saw the mayor was there, so yeah, it's a good point. Just because you see something attributed to somebody, that person represents the really an administration. So, and the same thing with, I got to say, Eversource, Mitch Gross, he's their spokesman. He this morning, 6:30 a.m., sent me an update about what was going on, and yesterday too. And that's pretty. That's rare, especially when it's not like I'm the New York Times. I'm a guy with a bad mustache in my basement.
Yeah, and I when we were discussing media, we explained to them the importance of the Valley Indy.
Oh,
It,
okay, thanks.
we did. I'm not trying to toot your horn, but we explained to them how in our area you're an immediate source of news, and you're probably one of the best because of your, and it's all social media nowadays, and the fact that you're all social media driven, you're probably one of the best people to get information to get it out to our small area.
It is
So
interesting, like, and the other, and this is totally maybe nobody even cares about this, but just the way Facebook is so, you've got the Ansonia community group, the Derby community group. I run a Derby community group. You got the Valley Indy, and you'll see like nobody's reading all those Facebook groups. It's very hard to, all right, here's what's going on. But then 5 minutes later, someone will ask because they didn't see it. It's becoming
correct.
very difficult to get info out.
I
It
mean,
gets
even
out there, but
handling the fire department social media, if we go to put a message out, I think there's like 7 groups that I have to share, find the group, share, find a group to send it out. So sending out information, the good thing is it hits, I mean, you could see the statistical data. You're hitting 4,000 people within moments of putting it out. So it has become a massive tool in our toolbox, especially during emergencies, to keep people informed, sometimes keep people away from areas during an emergency. And it is an emerging field. I hate to say we keep saying social media is an emerging field. It's been around for a while, but it just seems like it's much easier and quicker to get the word out that way.
And then that first night, that Tuesday night, I mean, you also had the election going on. Well, were you right through the night? You looked a little glassy eyed the next morning. Is that
Yeah.
what that was?
So, Chief Glode was the initial incident commander. He arrived on scene about 2 o'clock. I got there about 4:30, quarter to 5. I relieved him. I stayed at the command post until around 2 a.m. At that point, we start working what we call operational cycles, and we start planning ahead. Well, if I have to be here from here to here, who's here from here to here, and start scheduling things out. So I stayed till about 2. We had one of the other fire officers come in from 2 to 6. Another one came in from 6 to about 8, and then about 8:30, I returned till around 2. Then Chief Glode took back over from 2. Chief Biggs took over for a little while, so we did have a cycle. But yeah, I went home at 2, got up again at 6, and we're back out. Again, the whole time we were rotating, we had members at the firehouse that were there for the duration.
Yeah, and I had heard one call, Dave, that in Seymour as well, like everyone had manned their stations. Is that right?
So again, the pluses of the Valley, being the small tight knit communities that we are. When anything happens, when this first happened, my first call, like I said, was to Chief Eamon. My second call was to Chief Jones from Shelton Fire to let him know, and Shelton Fire actually did backfill their firehouses to cover us. And then my next call was to Chief Lombardi in Seymour to tell him what was going on and to keep him situated. Then I called Chief Dumas in Orange to let him know. And it's very common, like you said, it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that people don't think about. But when one of the towns gets a major incident, we let the other communities around us know, because if anything escalates or if we need more help, we're going to start drawing them in. So it's always better to kind of get them ramped up and staged than be behind the 8 ball and really need them.
And then I don't know if it came to fruition, but that first night, Tuesday night, was cold. And I know there was somebody posted on one of the pages, my 80-year-old mother, is alone and cold. What was the plan for anybody who might have needed shelter? I don't. And I heard some.
Eversource actually at that time had a thing where you could go to a hotel, and their instructions were just go to a hotel, and they will take care of the bill. I guess you have to submit the bill. They also, through their call center, they had some things set up to help relocate people if needed. I don't know how many people took advantage of that.
Well, that's good that it wasn't. I guess it could have been worse had it been in the middle of the dead of winter.
Correct. It wasn't that cold, and then thankfully, yesterday was kind of warm, so that was one thing that played in our favor.
All right. And then in terms, my last question, and then maybe there's others that I'm missing, but thanks for for doing this with absolutely no notice. In terms of
People don't realize how good we are at doing it. Like between this and our podcast, shooting from the hip, we're good.
You're easy to talk to. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's I just did all right. How about, I'm not exactly comfortable with the background all the time either, but I'm
completely okay with your background right now. I mean, it's in the past, but
I just realized, that's the guy we're talking to right there. I didn't vote for him. I just happened to steal this. No, what happened was, you were in my ward, although you since moved out of it. That was with permission. That was on a lawn under the snow. I just want people to know. I don't remember how I got that one, but they're not stolen. Now I forgot what my last question was. Oh, in terms of COVID-19, there's a resurgence going on. In terms of your responses now, has that affected, was the FDA?
Yeah, so we initiated a COVID response plan. Obviously back in March, we identified 4 phases of our operations. And, we were in phase 3 and of our return to normal operation. And then with the uptick in COVID, we reverted back to phase 2, which we limit. There's no more than 10 members allowed in the firehouse at any time. Obviously, masks must be worn when responding to incidents and at the firehouse. We've canceled all in-person training and canceled all meetings other than via Zoom or via distance purposes. So, it falls much more on the ambulance corps, and Brian Mezzapel has had his hands full with the COVID. The fire department side of things, we don't respond to medical calls, so that part of the equation is out. But we always ask the questions when arriving on a scene of anybody. Does anyone in the house have a fever, experiencing COVID symptoms, anything like that? So we really just stepped back to our previous level. Like everybody, we went back to step 2, basically.
Okay, good. Chief Lenart, is there anything else you wanted to add about this incident?
No, I just want to, again, thank, the members for their hard work. A lot of guys from the fire department spent a lot of time working on these things. And, the public was great. We didn't really have many problems. We actually had some people that wanted to message us. They wanted to know if we needed food, if we needed things, and that we're all set with. There's several things in this world you really don't have to worry about, and the fireman eating is one of them. So I just want to thank everybody for their support and all that. And again, thank the members for the job they did. We are going to be, now where we go from here from the fire department, we do what's called an after action review. So we've already sent out the forms, it's paperwork world, to all the entities, all the members that were involved for feedback, and we'll sit down and review it and go over the good, the bad, the ugly, problems that we came up with, solutions we came up with, and how to kind of adjust our response so that if something, God forbid, like this happens again, we're better prepared. So that'll be kind of so as much as everyone's like, oh, the incident's over, on the emergency service sides of things, myself, the emergency management of both Derby and Ansonia, we have a lot of paperwork to do from here out.
Good. Yeah, everything's a learning lesson. And I would assume Eversource is doing the same task. I should probably give them a call as well. So
yeah, good one.
All right, Chief Lenart, thank you for everything.
No problem, pal. We'll see you at the next one at the way this year's going.
Yeah, right.